This is just a day's worth of snow, and it's taking 2 diggers to clear this stretch and knock down these walls of snow so they don't block the roads again as people try to get through with supplies.
Roads are getting cleared and supplies are getting through, but for hundreds on Arran, this will be the 4th night of many they are going to spend without power. Debbie Edward, ITV News, Arran.
Well, farmers have suffered some of the worst of the extreme weather. Many have been braving the snow to dig livestock out of deep drifts. But with the bitter conditions set to persist, thousands more animals may be lost. From Northern Ireland, Mark Mallet on those who are fearing for their future.
The snow stretches right along the eastern counties of Northern Ireland. These pictures taken earlier today show farms, roads and fields blanketed under several feet of snow. In rural County Down, and for miles the snow is stacked high, and underneath hundreds of sheep are trapped. It was hoped lambing season would be the saving grace for farmers following a wet summer last year, but this is a catastrophic start to spring.
It's dreadful, so that just can't get over it. So we're digging lambs out, everything was stranded on Friday for 7 hours.
And it's not just farmers in Northern Ireland. Here in Wales, one farmer pulls one of his flock alive from underneath a 6-foot wall of snow, but the majority aren't so lucky. For his family, this is the worst natural disaster in living memory.
And I was in shorts this time last year, and the sheep were going under trees to get cover from the sun. That's how crazy this weather's gone. My father can't remember, and he's 77, he can't remember a spring like this.
There is no sign, is there, of the weather improving, and any sign that these weather conditions are going to calm down, are going to settle in any way?
I don't think so, either in the short or the long term. The forecast of the Met Office is for a white Easter, at least in some parts, and in the longer term, I think there's a warning in what Sir John Beddington, the government's chief scientist, told me this afternoon. He won't tie any particular event of extreme weather like this to climate change, but what he says is you've got to take a longer term view. And the weather we're looking at now is a result of the greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere 20 or 30 years ago. Since then, we've been putting more and more of those gases up into the skies, and it's likely we're going to have to live with more and more extreme weather in the future.
There are a bunch of other versions of it that I and some collaborators have thought about how to exploit, and of course we may be wrong. This hasn't all been peer reviewed. We're in the middle of thinking about it, but so far it seems good. But it looks like we could achieve long atmospheric lifetimes, much longer than before, because they're levitated. We could move things out of the stratosphere into the mesosphere, in principle solving the ozone problem. I'm sure there will be other problems that arise. And finally, we could make the particles migrate to over the poles, so we could arrange the climate engineering so it really focused on the poles, which would have minimal bad impacts in the middle of the planet where we live, and do the maximum job of what we might need to do, which is cooling the poles in case of planetary emergency, if you like. This is a new idea that's crept up that may be essentially a cleverer idea than putting sulfates in. Whether this idea is right or some other idea is right, I think it's almost certain that we will eventually think of cleverer things to do than just putting sulfur in. That if engineers and scientists really turn their minds to this, it's amazing how we can affect the planet. The one thing about this is it gives us extraordinary leverage. This improved science and engineering will, whether we like it or not, give us more and more leverage to affect the planet, to control the planet, to give us weather and climate control, not because we plan it, not because we want it, just because science delivers it to us bit by bit, with better knowledge of the way the system works and better engineering tools to affect it. Now suppose that space aliens arrived on, maybe they're going to land at the UN headquarters down the road here, or maybe they'll pick a smarter spot. But suppose they arrive and they give you a box, and the box has two knobs. One knob is the knob for controlling global temperature, maybe another knob is a knob for controlling CO2 concentrations. You might imagine that we would fight wars over that box, because we have no way to agree about where to set the knobs. We have no global governance, and different people will have different places they want it set. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. It's not very likely. But we're building that box. The scientists and engineers of the world are building it piece by piece in their labs, even when they're doing it for other reasons, even when they're thinking they're just working on protecting the environment. They have no interest in crazy ideas like engineering the whole planet. They develop science that makes it easier and easier to do. And so I guess my view on this is not that I want to do it, I do not, but that we should move this out of the shadows and talk about it seriously, because sooner or later we'll be confronted with decisions about this, and it's better if we think hard about it, even if we want to think hard about reasons why we should never do it. I'll give you two different ways to think about this problem that are the beginning of my thinking about how to think about it. But what we need is not just a few oddballs like me thinking about this, we need a broader debate, a debate that involves musicians, scientists, philosophers, writers who get engaged with this question about climate engineering and think seriously about what its implications are. So here's one way to think about it, which is that we just do this instead of cutting emissions because it's cheaper. I guess the thing I haven't said about this is it is absurdly cheap. It's conceivable that, say, using the sulfates method or this method I've come up with, you could create an ice age at a cost of 0.001% of GDP. You could create an ice age at a cost of 0.001% of GDP. It's very cheap. We have a lot of leverage. It's not a good idea, but it's just important. I tell you how big the lever is. The lever is that big. And that calculation isn't much in dispute. You might argue about the sanity of it, but the leverage is real. So because of this, we could deal with the problem simply by stopping reducing emissions, and just as the concentrations go up, we can increase the amount of geoengineering.
The Snowy Mountains region is an exceptional place and a special environment. It's best known for Australia's highest mountains and the nation's finest ski resorts. But it's also home to some of the nation's most unique wildlife and the Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme. But snowfall has been gradually decreasing over the last 50 years, seriously depleting water resources which are the lifeblood of much of regional Australia. Now, scientists are confident that cloud seeding can be used to increase natural snowfalls, so Snowy Hydro is conducting a carefully designed 6-year experiment to confirm these benefits. Research has shown that under certain conditions, clouds passing over the Snowy Mountains often contain large amounts of water at temperatures below freezing. This is known as supercooled liquid water. However, these particular clouds are naturally inefficient at producing snow and simply evaporate as they descend and warm on the eastern side of the mountains. This results in a natural phenomenon known as a rain shadow. But the excess water in these clouds can be made to fall as snow by introducing tiny particles for the water to freeze to. Snowy Hydro scientists monitor the approaching weather systems to identify clouds that are suitable for seeding. A network of 13 generator sites along the western side of the mountain range burn minute amounts of silver iodide solution to create artificial ice-forming particles which are swept up into the passing clouds. Invisible to the naked eye, each silver iodide crystal is so small that more than 300 million would fit on the head of a pin. The targeted clouds contain enormous volumes of supercooled liquid water droplets, and when they come in contact with a silver iodide crystal, they freeze onto it, and a tiny snowflake begins to form. As more and more water droplets attach and freeze, the snowflake continues to grow, until it becomes too large to remain in the cloud and falls to the ground.